welcome back. Just before the break, we heard about a breakthrough in COVID testing in Canada. But consider where we're at today. Since the start of all of this, only about 4.5 million COVID tests have been administered in this country. Now, maybe that sounds like a lot to you, but at most, if you think about it, that's just 12% of Canadians who have ever been tested. And it's probably even less than that because some of those tests are people who've gone back more than once to be retested. So as Canada's testing capacity opens up and as our schools and our workplaces open up, tonight we ask the question, does this country have a critical testing blind spot? Joining me now to discuss, infectious diseases specialist Dr. Lynora Saxinger and epidemiologist Dr. Raywat Deonandan. Hello to the two of you. Dr. Deonandan, maybe I'm just going to start with a simple question to you. Do we need to do a better job of normalizing the idea of getting tested? Like, I'm going to go to work, get my groceries, fill up the car, get tested, then make dinner.
Okay, so until a vaccine is actually in our hands, testing is probably our #1 tool for getting back to some semblance of normal. So you must embrace testing. It must be part of our lives. Now the question is, must we spend public health dollars on normalizing it? I don't think so. We just need to put tests in a lot more places in society and it will become normalized for us. So in schools, in places like long-term care centers, and any place where you're going to encounter a lot of people.
Dr. Saxinger, your take on that?
I think that testing has a really crucial role because we know that some people can spread when they have either minimal symptoms or have not yet developed symptoms. And so identifying those individuals who are at risk of spreading to others is important. The other piece, I guess, is stigmatization. I think that there's a little bit of a different feelings around having a positive test right now, and I think that it just has to be part of the landscape. It really does, that people get tested. Some people have very minimal symptoms and nuisance symptoms. Other people get very sick.
But what is the caveat or maybe the caution in interpreting test results? I mean, both if you get a negative result, false sense of security, or even a positive result, Dr. Saxinger.
Well, I think it's important to know that if you have a negative test, that counts for now, and that there is a slight risk that you might have infection that was not captured by that test. Testing depending on where the site is, so like throat versus nose versus nasopharyngeal, testing is 80 to 95% sensitive in most hands, but no test is perfect. So you could miss something. And the other thing is that it only counts for now. So if you could become test positive tomorrow if you're negative today, and so you shouldn't really wear it as a shield. You should just take it as a momentary reassurance, I think. And the other part to know is that if you test positive, that could reflect a prior infection. So if you had an illness in the last 4 to 6 weeks even, you could still test positive now. And that's important to know because you're not super likely to transmit infection if you had a prior illness and now you're recovered but still basically having viral fragments that are detectable. And the other thing is, of course, if you have a test positive now when you feel completely fine, you still could also develop symptoms in the next little while. And that would be a much higher risk scenario from the point of view of an active infection that can transmit to others.
Dr. Deonandan, if we generally agree that more testing is generally a good thing, what's the bottleneck now? I mean, is it capacity? Is it access? Or is it just convincing people to go get tested?
All of the above. It depends on where you are in the country. In some parts of the country, the remote areas, there aren't enough test kits, not enough swabs. Sometimes there aren't enough well-trained human resources people to conduct the test effectively. Sometimes there isn't sufficient lab capacity to do rapid testing to get it back in a reasonable time, like 2 or 3 days. And very often now, especially in denser urban areas, there isn't the desire for people to get tested. They see it as a bit of a hassle to line up for hours on end. So we need to approach these bottlenecks on all fronts and really increase our capacity across the board.
Last word to you, Dr. Saxinger. Maybe a controversial idea, mandatory testing. What do you think?
I think that's interesting. I think that I would only foresee people even pondering that in settings that are quite closed and quite high risk. So for example, say employees at a long-term care center or employees that have to work closely together in essential services. I actually don't think it's highly likely that we would need to make testing mandatory. I think it's more likely that we have to make testing easy. I don't think people object to the testing per se, but they might object to the processes that they have to go through to get testing. So I'm not seeing that as being a big debate in the future. I think we're just going to be looking to make testing easier and more convenient and more limber, basically.
Doctors, always excellent to hear from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.